Hi, welcome to the NCGR Podcast, where we're building community through astrological research and education. And today we have Tony Howard joining us. Tony is the founder of Astrology University, also writer, teacher, and longtime NCGR member. Astrology University, for those of you who don't know, is a school that provides high-quality astrology education by connecting students with master-level astrologers and who inspire us, as well as teach with webinars and courses curated for and by astrology lovers. So we're very excited to have you here with us today, Tony. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite, Deborah.
Of course. So today I definitely wanted to discuss why accessible astrological education and research is really important to you. But first, I figured let's hear about your personal journey with astrology and how you first found astrology and how it grew into not just a career, but a whole school.
Yeah, amazing. So, believe it or not, I got started when I was around 15, I think I was. It might have been 14, but I think I was 15 because I used to go to this New Age bookstore where I lived I went to high school in Houston, Texas. I'm originally from the Midwest in Illinois, but I would go to this New Age bookstore and I met an astrologer there and would just chat with her. She must have seen me browsing the astrology section and was kind of chatting me up. And I went in often to the bookstore and got to know her. And she invited me to babysit for her son. She would go do astrology readings in this entertainment kind of club on the weekends. And she just needed somebody to kind of take her son out to dinner and play video games for a couple of hours while she worked. And I was like, that sounds like an easy gig to me. So
Yeah.
in the process of getting to know her, she read for me. So I had my first reading with her. And then she started teaching me some things about astrology in addition to other things. She introduced me to my first glass of carrot juice. So
Just very
awesome.
well-rounded figure.
Yes, health and healing and astrology all in one package. And from that moment on, I was really hooked, and I started reading astrology books and annoying all my friends, talking about their charts. And in my 20s, I started taking it a little more seriously, and I felt a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of information, as one does when one learns just what astrology encompasses and how much is there. And I thought to myself, well, maybe I'll do this as a retirement career because I feel like it might take me that long to learn it.
I
And so
definitely get you on that.
yeah. So I was in that zone for a while. And then eventually I came across in the early 2000s Stephen Forrest's apprenticeship program, which he used to just do in person. He has an online school now, but back then it was all in person. I studied. That's when I really advanced my studies and started digging in more. I also, around that same time, would mentor with folks that I was getting astrology readings from. And so I advanced my skills just thinking about doing consults myself. And I also started working for astrologers at the time because I was a web developer. And so I would reach out to folks like Stephen Forrest. Caroline Casey, I think, was the first person I worked for on her website briefly. And then Aaron Sullivan, Stephen Forrest, and a few other people. And I started working with them on a professional level. And then around that same time, got up to speed with myself doing readings. And then a few years later, I was producing in-person workshops with some of these astrologers, and I just noticed how their communities were all really unique. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if these communities could somehow come together and so that there could be a cross-pollination of these styles and approaches to astrology? And that's where the idea for Astrology University came from.
Wow. Okay. So that kind of set me up for like another question I had for you of why you decided to do like a faculty-based school versus a school of your own individual teaching. So that makes so much sense that you were part of all these really different, unique communities that offered you so much. And you're like, okay, let's do something for everyone. Um, and also really makes sense that you were also doing web development websites because I love the Astrology University website. It's so easy to use. It's like in the world of astrology, we know we've all been on really antiquated websites. So the Astrology
Yes.
University one is so easy to use and to navigate. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense as well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think the first time I reached out to, I think Caroline Casey and Stephen Forrest had something in common. Their websites were mostly black with like purple neon text and
Yes,
some
sounds
things kind
familiar.
of like floating around. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So I was like, I think you might reach more people if we clean some things up a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's become so important, I think, as astrology has evolved into the current, like contemporary times, because everyone is looking for so much information out there on
Right.
on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so it is one of the things where when we get somewhere, we have to see like, okay, is this something that feels like aligned? Even just like simple thing like design can really help with that. But is this easy to navigate? Um, so I definitely think that probably it's all part of your personal magic and your personal story of how you were able to develop Astrology University. But I also really admire how when you first got into astrology, it started obviously with one astrologer, but then with everyone that you worked with, like, okay, how do we do like a mentorship program? You weren't just reading books, you were getting readings, practicing readings, getting more involved in other communities. And so I wonder how you were able to a I guess find the time, right? As like you are a normal human who's trying to live their life to be able to be involved in so many different programs and mentorships. Yeah, like those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, finding the time, I just like to work all the hours of the day, I guess. And for me, education is one of my own education. I mean, I guess also educating others is going to fit into what I'm about to say as well. It's like a no-brainer, but I did a values assessment as part of my coaching training for myself because you do it for yourself so that you can do it with other folks too. And education was in my top 5 values. So when I had a day job before I did all this. I worked for a magazine for 4 years before I went out on my own freelancing with web development. And I was also a massage therapist and did body mind. I did body mind healing as well for 9 years and working for myself. But during that time, in all my free time, I'm always learning something. I always have been. That's just been honestly since as long as I can remember. So I'm always burning the midnight oil, reading something, and and then once I went all in with astrology, I really spent all my time in that zone. So carving out time to go to workshops and of course, mentoring, private mentoring. Back then, we didn't have the online education. So it was a lot of private mentoring and self-study,
Mhm.
basically, and then some workshops when those were available. Absolutely. And I think I forgot the second part of your question.
Oh, well, it was just having the courage to be able to offer what you have to astrologers who are like, were at the time more experienced, and to not shy away from that.
I don't know where that came from. I'm a Virgo and it was just from a Virgo perspective of I
Mhm.
visited their websites and I thought to myself, wow, your website doesn't exactly match the caliber of your work. It's very Virgo perspective. In other words, I think I could make your website a little better to match, what I see as the quality of your work. And I just sent an email. I just said, hey,
Mm.
I've got some ideas for how your website could be improved. Would you like to have a chat about it? And there was just always synchronicity, and every person I reached out to said yes. It was one of those kind of meant to be moments, I think. And of course, in the process of working with someone on their website, I'm also getting some extra mentoring just through those relationships. Uh, Lots, because we have to have lots of personal conversations. We have to talk about their vision and their work. And I'm just back then was just really immersing myself in who they were because I wanted to create a website that would be an extension of who they were, not who I was, right? So I would work with them to find that.
Love that. So then that's how your current career, your supposedly retirement career became your full career, just being
Yeah,
able to
yeah,
offer and step up when you can. Yeah.
yeah. Well, what happened is I was doing massage therapy, and about 7 years in, my body started to give me signals that I might not be able to keep going for as long as I wanted to. And I did it for about 2 years too long because I didn't stop then. I kept going. And then I blew out my thumb joints, meaning I couldn't use my thumbs well anymore, and my thumb joints were really um, having some trouble. And so the retirement career, the timeline got sped up
And
a lot.
you're
Yeah.
ready. You were already putting in the
And I
work and
was and
building
I was
something.
already, yep, I was already building those relationships, and the time was kind of right. When we started Astrology University in 2011, I started by just having a monthly webinar. And back then that was pretty unusual. So, yeah, and we did probably one a month for about a year. The response was nice, and the 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 business grew really organically, really in a lovely, manageable, slow kind of way until about 2018. And I don't know if you remember or not, but the New York Times did an article in 2018 that described the interest in astrology kind of blowing up that year, where they were basing it off of analysis of Google searches for astrology terms, and they noted that the searches had doubled that year. And that was reflected in the business at Astrology University as well. That was also the year before, in 2017, I started putting together a curriculum for a 4-year training program because we had grown that much that I started thinking that maybe we should grow into the name a little bit better.
Mhm. Yeah. Put up a course.
And have some longer trainings, and
Yeah.
and I worked on the curriculum for 2 years, and I had the input of some amazing mentors like Karen Hamaker Sontag, who'd had a school in or in the Netherlands since I think she said 1975. So, but the mid 70s, she's had a school there ever since, in Dutch, right? So a lot of English speaking people don't tend to go there for
Yeah.
obvious reasons. I'm sure it's a wonderful school. Anyway, she had some really valuable input, and graciously allowed or offered to review my curriculum with me. And then the 4-year training program was born out of that. And it just came at this time when there was this upsurge in interest in astrology, and it's just been amazing and beautiful, and grew from there. And of course, I wanted to involve all the faculty members and great astrologers that I developed relationships with, and bring them all together into the program so that students could have that. I was thinking about a college education where students can get access to more than one point of view, more than one technique, more than one way of doing things, so that they can learn to find their own voice and to think critically and analytically themselves. It's just a different model than that studying under one mentor model, which I also think is great and valuable, and great for some students. I was just trying to create something different. And that is one feature of the program. Every time I ask people what they like about the program, that's something people return to again and again, is that diversity of experience and opinion and thought.
Absolutely. Because astrology, as we know, has so many different thoughts, perspective, techniques, schools, and even if we go back to like the house systems that people use, there's so many points where we could all do, whether it's like under just one specific mentor or one specific book, right? And the more you learn, because we're all ravenous for this information, the more you realize, how do I integrate this? Because this is from
Right.
this period and this is from that period, or this one uses this
Yeah.
system, and so it's
Hmm.
part of like the journey of actually becoming a practicing astrologer, of being able to differentiate and see what works for you specifically. So absolutely, I totally agree on that.
In the program, that's my part of my vision was that there would be some folks, it's often me, but that act as a guide to helping students be in that space where, okay, I've just heard this from this teacher and this somewhat conflicting or maybe totally conflicting idea from this teacher. What do I do with that? So that students aren't alone. Like in our program, you're not alone in those moments to try as you're trying to figure out what you think and which direction you want to go in. And so you have guidance and support in that process. And I've probably, of course, like a lot of people do, creating the kind of education that I wish I had had when I
Yeah,
was
what
learning.
we
Yeah,
needed.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Um, and so I know that you mentioned just now that that guide for these new students when they're taking courses or classes at Astrology University. And I wonder what you would advise students who are at the beginning of their astrology journey. At that point, everyone just wants to consume so much information. And that's when we have this like eagerness and drive motivation to just learn and learn, learn, learn. Um, but we all hit a wall at one point. So I wonder what you would advise a baby astrologer on the beginning of their journey.
Absolutely. I want to honor or recognize a couple of things that you said that were so great is that excitement that people have at the beginning. So when people join our program, I get to talk with those people in that process that are new. And so I'll just share for anybody listening what I would share with them, which is to really nurture and honor your excitement because that doesn't I don't want to say it doesn't last because honestly, we come back to that again and again in our practice of astrology. But there's a certain quality of it there's a certain quality at the beginning that's different. And you really want to give yourself time and space to be in that energy, to write about, I would say to, as one piece of advice, to do something with what you're learning, journal about it, write down your thoughts, free associate, because astrology is a creative language and it unlocks the creative faculties inside us. And so a lot of people at the beginning will start to free associate, make associations to think about people in their life and how their life is correlating with this thing that they're learning. And it's so interesting and exciting. And they want to tell everybody about it. And
Yeah.
so definitely do something with that excitement and nurture it. Write down your thoughts and work with it. Look at charts, talk to people. So that's one piece. Another thing, though, that's really important in our program, we've created a kind of a building block structure to learning because, as you know, there's like a ton of moving parts in astrology.
Hmm.
At the beginning, before we can do chart interpretation, we have to learn planet signs and houses and how those all work together, and of course aspects as well, and uh, and and then there are lots of techniques that we can layer on. But just the basics are already pretty complex, right?
Yeah.
Just all the planets, the signs, and the houses, and all the different combinations that those can be in. That's a lot for students to grok. So
Mhm.
I tell students to be really patient with themselves and to focus on, and now I'm a Virgo, so I would say this, but to focus on the pieces one at
Yeah.
a time, to kind of break it down and to allow yourself to be in the not quite understanding the big picture yet, because it's just like music where you have to learn the notes before you can play a
Yeah.
scale, and then you have to learn the scales before you can improvise. And it's
Hmm.
just like that with astrology. So you just have to have some patience. In our program, what happens is right around course 3 or 4, students start to experience that frustration of they know enough to know what they don't know.
Hmm.
And then around course 5 or 6, they start to sort of settle down and settle into the rhythm and also trust the process of the education. And this happens in our program, but it can also happen when you're doing your own self study, to just trust that it's going to come together and to keep
Hmm.
working on the parts, and eventually it does all come together. Yeah.
I totally agree. I think that when we're first, I think as soon as you're an astrologer, you're always needing to have a conversation or communication with it. But I think, especially in the beginning, is finding people that allow you to be able to express that creative language. So I love that you mentioned, like, even if it's just like free form writing or journaling, needing to communicate this some way or get this out and express this is so critical with astrology. And just the idea of naming it as a creative expression is really beautiful because it does like paint pictures. It adds so much depth, so many layers when we're communicating in astrology or through astrology. So
Absolutely.
absolutely. And then I also wonder for students who want to advance their practice, and want to teach, what do you, since you've yourself went through the journey of, being a student of astrology, learning it, giving readings, and then becoming a teacher yourself, what type of advice do you give to them who want to further their career in teaching others?
Yes. So I kind of took the Virgo path as might be expected, which was wrestling with this feeling of not being quite ready yet and not even really conceiving of wanting to teach in the way that I do now. So I really kind of spent a lot of time uh, developing my own skills and working on my own confidence. And at some point, with doing consults with folks, you just have to start doing them. And for any Virgos listening, you're not going to feel ready. You just got to start. Like, you got to start somewhere. And some folks do a better job at that than others. I see that in my students as well. I have a Sagittarius student, for instance, who just graduated, and she jumped in sooner rather than later because she felt really excited about what she wanted to share. And she started practicing, I would say, well before she had what I would call a full toolkit, but she knew what she knew, right? And what she knew, she was excited about already. And that excitement you can pass on to others. And in the process, has, she's been working on building up her practice throughout the program. And by the time we got to the end, she already has a part-time client load, right? So that just shows you the value in getting out there and doing the work with folks. Are you going to look back at your first year of consults and wish you had done them differently? Probably. But you learn so much faster if you're practicing it while you're learning it, right? So that's really, really valuable. I put that off for a long time myself. I waited until I felt more confident. And then I remember the first time I was asked to give a lecture at a venue, and the person who had invited me said, "That was the best lecture we've had all year. Like, have where have you been? Like, what? And have you been teaching somewhere else?" And I was like, "Nope, I've just been spending 10 years preparing for this one lecture." So
Classic Virgo, though, the preparation, I'm sure, right before was intense as well, though.
exactly. So, but to rewind a little bit, I wove in the story about doing consults on purpose because it's really helpful to have some practical experience before you start teaching. Now, there are those who are just in the theoretical realms and spend their time there. There are great teachers that you and I could name right now who don't have as much consulting experience as someone like, let's say, Dimitra George, who has a ton of consulting experience, or Karen Hamaker-Santak, who's been consulting people since the 70s. There are some folks who live in more of the intellectual realm, who do research and study and write and then share their research. And that's valuable as well. But in either case, whichever perspective you're teaching astrology from, whether it's coming out of your experience working with real people in consultation or through study and research, you certainly want to put some time in, right? So one of the things that's just common on the internet these days, not just in astrology, but in any field, is that people will kind of barely learn something and then get on social media and start teaching it. I mean, that's one way, and you do learn through teaching. So I don't even want to come across as sort of like judging that, but I personally appreciate learning from folks who've spent some time mastering a subject a little bit longer. Uh, yeah, as a path. So that's the path I would kind of advocate for.
And it's interesting when I first started my astrology journey. I remember I DM'd someone, an astrologer, and I was like, "Oh, like, where do you study? Like, what certification program did you do?" And they told me there's no certification program. I just am doing it. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't even know because I'm also a pharmacist as my day job. And so like I am very, I don't know, that's kind of like a standard and expectation I have for any type of like consulting thing, especially astrology, something I think should be taken very seriously because you're dealing with people. I think for people um, who want like a more, it's not even just like a certification. I think through like the Astrology University like curriculum or even through the NCGR certification program, it creates a standard and it creates a strong foundation of, like you said, the toolbox. And so I know that both Astrology University and like the NCGR have that in common, of encouraging students and astrology lovers to learn that foundation so that we do conserve, right, and able to pass down these teachings, as well as just have us share the language, right?
Yeah.
Everything it encompasses. Um, so that's why I know Astrology University and NCGR work so well together and why you're part of the affiliate program. And for those who aren't aware, if you're a member, you have a 10% discount to Astrology University. And for a full list of our affiliates, I'll put it in the show notes, but it's ncgrastrology.org/affiliates.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that one of the things I love about what NCGR does and has stood for many years is, I mean, I like the certification. So trying to hold a standard, making it, when you have that available. I did something similar with the 4-year training program in Astrology University. One of the intentions was just to offer a 4-year training program because I saw what was kind of starting to happen online in terms of how marketing works. And I was starting to see like people offering a weekend course or a 2-week course and saying, you can become an astrologer in my 2-week training and just pay me $3,000. And then, having a 4-year program, I just wanted to even just to have it available so that people could look at that and go, maybe there's something to this, and it might take a little bit longer to learn astrology than
Yes,
a weekend, right? And so
that was
offering
my
that,
thought process. So 100%. Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're standing for that as well. And students who take our program can then sit for the NCGR exam. You guys also offer a book. I don't know if a lot of people know about this, but there's a book that you can get to kind of help prepare you for the NCGR exam. So I think it's important to have these kind of separate certification bodies that will, you could go to any number of schools and then come sit for the NCGR exam. And NCGR also offers education as well.
Absolutely. And that's actually something that I really want people to be aware of. Everyone has different learnings, skills, or not even skills, like um, ways they like to learn. And so I really have found that not every astrologer is the same. I've sat in certain classes and then my peers would be like, I didn't learn anything, and vice versa with other ones. So that's what I do love, the Astrology University curriculum. The people who learn a certain way can, go through there or go through another program or go through some certain NCGR teachers. And so I just love that we have a variety of different teachers that help you prepare for the exam. Because I've just seen firsthand how everyone learns differently, especially for something like astrology. That is just, it requires so many different parts of your brain.
Yeah.
So it's like there's the math, there's the interpretation, there's
Yeah.
just so many. It's such a like a if your brain is firing off from all sides.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. And also to make the information and the education accessible, right? Because if we only had it one way, then it doesn't make it accessible to everyone.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, we have a scholarship program as well as Astrology University, and we have a diversity mission. So we've been, I'm really proud of what we've been able to do so far in trying to develop a new generation of astrologers that reflects, the diversity that we see in the world, and to make astrology education accessible in a way that invites those folks in to participate.
And that's wonderful. Um, and I wonder how at this point, where Astrology University, as you said, like there was this big jump in 2017, 2018, and I'm sure it's just continued to evolve over the past like 6 years. And
Yeah.
so what you see for the future of Astrology University, it started as this concept of having a faculty to kind of cross-pollinate all these different teachers and their teachings and communities. And now, where are you at 2025 and 2026, which is around the corner?
Beautiful. Yeah. So where I am right now is it's in part about maintaining what we have and improving the program. I mean, 6 planets in Virgo. I'm always
Love
focused on
that.
making it better and better if I can. I'm trying to stay in that zone. I'm a pretty creative person myself, so I'm always coming up with new creative projects, but I'm really focused on nurturing the community, and it's such an amazing community. We just had our annual graduation ceremony last weekend, and my heart is still full from all of the beautiful connections and everything everyone has shared, and reflecting back on their time in the program. It's so fulfilling from my perspective as well. So I want to nurture all that. And also, I'm finding it more and more important to stand for a vision of astrology that has a healing focus, an empowering focus that helps folks uh, find that that creative participation inside themselves with astrology that can be so beautiful and healing, and to stand for that vision of astrology, because we're living in a time, because social media makes anybody and everyone's perspective so accessible. There's always been astrology out there that can cause harm to people, whether that's through deterministic negative predictions or descriptions of the natal chart that are fixed and limiting, using absolute statements, for instance, when none of us is an absolute statement. I mean, what's that phrase? The only constant in life is change. We all have the ability to grow and change, and our astrology, in my opinion, should reflect that, and we should participate with astrology with that awareness and background. So, I'm a big fan of the archetypal perspective as constellated by Richard Tarnas and Dane Rujar before him, and I just feel the importance of holding down the fort for that right now, because there's a lot of astrology out there that's not that. I do consults for clients at least once a week, somebody who's read something on an app that scared the crap out of them, and they're calling me for a
Astrology
consult.
rehabilitation. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
exactly.
I
Yeah.
know. It's hard. I think especially right now with the world of certain apps, and then even the current transits, things have been so doom and gloom sometimes,
Yeah.
with astrology. So I really appreciate that. And that just like helps me feel at ease. So I'm sure everyone else will turn to Astrology University and to you for that as well. So thank
Nice.
you.
Well, we're here if you need us.
Yes, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And before you go, I just also wanted to, because you're not only an affiliate, Astrology University is not only an affiliate for NCGR, but you're also a member. So I want to ask how you first connected with NCGR, how you found it.
Yeah. Well, when I was still learning, I discovered the astrology conferences, and I started going to conferences back when astrology has changed a lot in the conference scene. And when I started going, there was a big age gap between me and everyone else there. It was like a lot of older folks, and there's no judgment about that. But back when I went, I went to an NCGR conference early on, and I just had a great experience. I think research is so important. Research in astrology is so important. I might approach it from a less like I guess from a more creative place, uh, maybe, I don't know, than maybe the original mission was. But my experience of NCGR, even at that first conference, is that there was a real diversity of approaches, and NCGR seemed to welcome in the kind of astrologers who were kind of like quietly working at in their office on something, or with clients or doing some research, and then they would kind of come to the conference and report on what they did. They weren't necessarily high profile, visible, writing books or anything, but the material they shared, I always found so interesting and valuable. And they're also really interesting cast of characters.
Yes, I agree on all that.
Yeah. So I've always loved that about NCGR and that part of the mission. So I really align with that. That's why I've been a member. And I also I like that there's an education component there. Like I said, I value the education and the certification component just to give people something to aim for.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Tony. We're so happy to have you as a member and an affiliate. So thank you so much for sharing your personal story with astrology and sharing a little bit more about the Astrology University curriculum. So it's been really informative and I hope inspiring because even, in the beginning when you were telling us about your journey, how it doesn't have to be this big opportunity that comes your way, but slowly putting yourself out there through the years, building something can really turn into something so impactful and successful. So thank you so much for everything.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Deborah. It's a pleasure to chat with you.